do Spider-Man No Way Home and The Matrix Resurrections have in common? They are both films that are exploiting fans for their money to revel in nostalgia. Run titles. Hello and welcome back to Popcorn Chat. I hope you guys are doing well. As you can tell by that cold open, we are talking about Spider-Man No Way Home and The Matrix Resurrections. Two films which have been highly anticipated towards the end of 2021 as a cinematic release, and I was lucky enough to see both of them this week. Before we go any further, I will say there will be a few spoilers going forward, so I'd suggest only watching this video if you've seen both of these films, or you can just skip ahead and watch one or the other review in the chapters down below. Let's talk about No Way Home, the film that's been hyped up probably just as much as Endgame and Infinity War, that whole era of MCU. It's had a real buzz sort of going up to this film release, and I tried to stay away from it. I tried to stay away from that second trailer. I blocked everything, but somehow it still got through, so I ultimately ended up watching it. I knew that there was going to be villains from the other Spider-Man film universe in this film, so yeah. Let's get into the review. So let's talk about some of the positives of this film. I have to say I really liked the first sort of 20 minutes of the film, setting up the situation with Peter Parker and where he is sort of, picking up from the second instalment. I like the way it was shot. I thought it was really it added to the chaos when we sort of find out, we follow Peter as he gets back to the apartment and that sort of handheld movement. I loved all of that. I think it really set up the film in a nice way. I do think this is a much better film than Tom Holland's Spider-Man's previous films in this sort of trilogy. I think this is one of the better ones. I did quite like the first one. I didn't really think much of the second film, so therefore I think this is much better. So let's talk about some of the negatives. And to be honest, there's more negatives than positives. I know a lot of people are loving this film, but I have a lot of issues with it. Do I think this film was overhyped? Yes. This was perfectly made for Spider-Man fans, of the cinematic sort of world of this character. I mean, I've seen all the other Spider-Man films and I was like, oh, yep, there's all the villains that we saw that was given away in the trailers way too early. Oh, look, there's the Spider-Man. Oh, I'm so surprised. I wasn't surprised they would be in here. One of my main issues with this is the story. I think it was hard to balance between, yes, this is Peter Parker sort of becoming a sort of college student, wanting to lead that life, which we've seen in Tom Holland's previous Marvel films. And I think, it sort of lost its way and was too focused on reveling in that nostalgia for fans by bringing in those characters that we've seen in other Spider-Man films. I think that was my main issue, was bringing back these characters. Yes, they sort of gave sort of satisfying endings for a lot of the characters, which I did kind of like, but at the same time, we can make that up for ourselves, or it leaves it open, or you will go and look at other characters in the comics or the games. There's so many different endings you can get, but it does give it a final ending for a few of those. Some of them were, I wasn't really satisfied with Electro and Sandman being there, or the Lizard Man, I can't remember his name, Reese fans. Let's just lock him in a lorry for a lot of the film. This film is very much about character. It's very much about the character of Spider-Man, and we see how Tom Holland's Spider-Man goes through this he's always been going through this sort of battle of, do I live the life of a regular now adult, going to college, or do I live the life of Spider-Man? But in the grand scheme of things, by the time you get to the end of the film, you think, was this story really relevant? What did I just watch? And then you get that second post-credit scene, and you see that this is really just a setup for Doctor Strange. This is Doctor Strange film. This is allowing him, creating that multiverse, setting up his film, I think, for most part of it. Going back to my point about bringing back characters, I would have liked to have seen the Vulture, Mysterio, Scorpion, all sort of brought back into this, but I don't think, because every film's had a different director, I think it's had a different vision. I think Marvel maybe have been had a different direction going for it in general. I would like to have seen that, because we were so close to a Sinister Six. As soon as Mysterio came in the second one, I thought this could be a version of Sinister Six that always sort of changed in the comics. And I think they really missed an opportunity on that one, and rather relied on the sort of nostalgia for fans, rather than progressing the story, adding new characters, which we didn't see in this film, which I thought was bizarre. We didn't really see new characters, and I would have liked to have seen that happen. In terms of side characters, I think Zendaya had a lot more to do, but that's not saying much. I think she sort of changes herself quite a lot Yeah, that could be a video in itself. And I thought Ned didn't have much to do really, so I think the side characters could have had a lot more to do, a lot more development. I think they were let down a little bit. So generally people are saying this is the best MCU film. I'm not sure about that. I think the MCU universe peaked really at Infinity War. I think that was the best sort of accumulation of the universe, and all these characters sort of in this world was the peak for me. Personally, that's my opinion. I don't think this is the best MCU film. Ultimately, I think this may be me falling out of love with the MCU. I know I'm going to say that, but I just don't think I'm sort of as invested as I used to be. So I'm going to give this film 2.5 stars out of 5. So let's move on to The Matrix Resurrection. I had very low expectations going into this film, and yeah, I was right. I didn't enjoy it. There were a few positives. I loved how Lana used a lot of the Sense8 actors, which is a program I absolutely loved that she did, and I was so happy to see a lot of those actors in this film. I think some of the camera work was pretty good. I liked sort of the shots where they sort of transitioned through doors. That's it. So this film has a lot of negatives. Very similar to Spider-Man. I felt it very sort of underwhelming as a whole. Again, it reflects upon itself. It's very meta, this film. It looks inwards on itself, with Neo building the Matrix as a game in this life. So it's very self-referential, and I wasn't a fan of that element. When you see the original Matrix, you know, it's known for its iconic sort of fight scenes, and nothing felt awe-inspiring here. It felt a little lackluster. It didn't feel as big. Those sort of choreography with the fight scenes just didn't really hit home for me. I thought generally the acting performances weren't great either. Say what you want about Keanu, he's a lovely person. The performance here was not great. and from a lot of actors as well. A lot of young actors who I generally think are very good. I don't think they performed their best here. And generally the whole world building just felt really small. I could tell there was so much CGI used, maybe because it was quicker, maybe it was ultimately cheaper. And let's only have 8 people stand around a circle, and let's have a whole green screen sunset in the woods. I can tell that from a mile away. And the same with the army. When you have Jada Pinkett Smith's sort of army, 10 people who will volunteer, 10 people. That's it. It just felt really small compared to when you looked at the like of the second sort of instalment in the Matrix. That sort of vast array of people that are free from the system. It just felt so much smaller. And I know it's different time frame. I just think this film had no scale to it, and that's a real shame. I went to see this film with my mum, and she absolutely loves sort of the Matrix trilogy and was there when it came out and was really sort of involved with that whole sort of fan base, and she enjoyed it. I've seen other people review it that have enjoyed it, but for me this film, it just didn't stick. I think I'd much rather go back to the first film than watch this film again. So I'm going to give The Matrix Resurrections 1.5 stars out of 5. So overall, it's been a generally quite disappointing week for me in terms of trips to the cinema. Obviously, people can have different opinions. I'm sure they've enjoyed both of these films, or one of them. But for me, it's been quite disappointing in these sort of late 2021 releases. Hopefully the new year brings some new exciting stories, ones that we've never heard of, and sort of have a new direction. So I'm excited to see what 2022 brings. I hope you guys enjoyed this video in some capacity, whether you agree or disagree with what I'm saying. Please let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. I'd love to read those. I will be doing a video just before the end of the new year talking about some of my favourite watches of 2021, so stay tuned for that, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon for another popcorn chat.